As my mother's fist slammed into my pregnant belly with full force, I felt the air rip out of my lungs. Pain shot through me, and the room spun in chaos as nurses rushed in. For a second, I thought both my baby and I were about to be lost forever. What happened next was more shocking than I could ever imagine. My name is Marina, and I am 28 years old. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, a city that shines with opportunities, but also hides countless struggles behind its glamorous lights. From as far back as I can remember, my life was shaped by my mother's strictness and my father's silence. My mother, Gloria, was a woman of control and criticism. She believed that nothing I did was ever enough, no matter how hard I tried. My father, Martin, was quieter, but he was never on my side. He always nodded to whatever my mother decided, and that made me feel alone even inside my own home. Growing up, I was never the daughter who could laugh freely or make mistakes without fear. Every choice I made was questioned. If I wanted to wear something a little different, Gloria would scold me. If I wanted to spend time with friends, she would say I was wasting my life. And if I ever spoke back, her sharp words cut me deeper than anything else. I often wondered what it felt like to be loved unconditionally by a parent. That question haunted me for years, because in my house, approval was rare and love was conditional. Despite the heavy atmosphere at home, I was determined to build a future for myself. I focused on my studies and worked hard through college. Education became my escape, the only thing I could control. In college, for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. It was there that I met Grant, the man who would change everything for me. He wasn't like anyone I had known before. Where my family was harsh and cold, he was warm, supportive, and gentle. He noticed the smallest things about me, like when I smiled nervously or when I avoided eye contact after being criticized. His kindness felt like a new language that I had longed to hear my whole life. Our friendship grew naturally, and soon it turned into love. For the first time, I felt someone believed in me just as I was. Grant would encourage me when I doubted myself, and he celebrated even my smallest achievements. He showed me what it meant to have a partner who stood beside me rather than above me. I knew in my heart that he was the one I wanted to spend my life with. But when Grant proposed to me, I knew trouble awaited. My mother was furious when I told her. She believed he wasn't right for me, not because of who he was, but because the choice was mine and not hers. She screamed that I was throwing away my life, and my father stood silently beside her, nodding, as if her words were law. They forbade me to marry him, but I had lived long enough under their control. I loved Grant, and I wasn't willing to give that up just to please them. I remember the day of my wedding as one of the most painful and liberating days of my life. My parents refused to attend. There was no blessing from them, no smile, no hug. Instead, there was only absence, a void that reminded me how little I mattered to them. But when I stood beside Grant, holding his hand, I knew I had chosen freedom. It was a step into a new life, away from years of criticism and control. I didn't know what challenges would come next, but for the first time, I believed I had made a choice that truly belonged to me. When I first moved into Grant's house after our wedding, I felt like I was finally breathing in a world that belonged to me. The small place we shared in Los Angeles wasn't fancy, but it was ours. For the first time, I wasn't living under the watchful eye of my mother, Gloria, or the silent judgment of my father, Martin. I believed that this new chapter would be filled with peace, laughter, and the freedom I had always dreamed of. In the beginning, it truly felt that way. Grant and I decorated the apartment together, choosing simple furniture, laughing as we argued over colors, and eating pizza on the floor when the boxes weren't unpacked. Those early days felt like something out of a dream, as though love alone could shield me from everything I had endured. But reality has a way of creeping in. Within weeks, I began to notice changes in the air around me. Grant's mother, Tessa, and his younger sister, Brianna, seemed welcoming at first. They would visit and bring small gifts, smiling sweetly as they praised our marriage. Yet behind those smiles, I often sensed a shadow of disapproval. They asked questions that felt more like tests. how I cooked certain meals, how I organized the apartment, how I planned to support their son. Tessa would pat my hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and Brianna would tilt her head and laugh whenever I didn't know how to respond. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination, convincing myself that I was simply oversensitive after years of my mother's harshness. Grant noticed too, and in the beginning he defended me. "Don't worry about them," he would whisper when Tessa's comments stung. "You're doing amazing." Those words were like balm on a wound, and I held on to them. For a while, I believed we could rise above their subtle jabs, that our love was strong enough to ignore outside voices. I leaned on Grant's support, grateful to finally have someone on my side. 2 months into our marriage, my life shifted once again. I found out I was pregnant. The moment I saw the positive test, my heart leapt with a mix of joy and fear. I wanted to tell Grant in the most special way, so I cooked his favorite dinner and placed the test inside a little box, wrapped like a gift. When he opened it, his eyes lit up, and for the first time in weeks, I saw the boyish excitement that had made me fall in love with him. He lifted me in his arms, spinning me around as he whispered, "We're going to be parents." That night, we laughed and dreamed together, imagining tiny clothes, midnight feedings, and the life we would build with our baby. But happiness, I would soon learn, doesn't always last. Tessa and Brianna's control began to grow stronger once they discovered the pregnancy. They acted as though my body, my choices, and my future belonged to them. Tessa began insisting on how I should eat, what I should avoid, even how I should move around the house. Brianna made sarcastic jokes, saying things like, "I hope you don't ruin your figure too much," or, "Let's see if you can even handle a baby." Their voices echoed my mother's, and that terrified me. The nightmare I thought I had escaped was seeping back into my life, disguised in new faces. At first, Grant brushed off their behavior, but over time, something shifted in him. The same man who once defended me started repeating their words. He would correct me sharply if I didn't follow one of Tessa's rules, or frown when Brianna mocked me instead of standing up for me. I watched the love in his eyes slowly dim, replaced by a look I had seen before, one of judgment and disappointment. It was like reliving my childhood all over again, only this time it was worse, because it came from the man I loved most. Still, I tried to hold on to hope. I told myself that things would get better, that once the baby arrived, everyone would soften. I wanted to believe that the family I had chosen wouldn't turn into the family I had left behind. But deep down, a quiet fear began to grow inside me, whispering that the battles I thought I had escaped were only beginning. The early glow of my pregnancy soon faded under the weight of constant tension inside Grant's family. What began as subtle remarks from Tessa and Brianna turned into open criticism, day after day. By the time I entered my 4th month, their words had grown sharper, and their tone more controlling. Tessa acted as though she were the one carrying the child, dictating everything I did, from how many hours I rested to which vitamins I should take. Brianna, on the other hand, seemed to take pleasure in reminding me that I wasn't good enough for her brother. "You don't really know how to raise a child," she said once, smirking as she watched me prepare a simple dinner. "You could barely manage cooking pasta the other night." Each comment pierced me, but the worst pain came from watching Grant silently agree, or worse, echo their thoughts. The man who once promised to protect me from the world was slowly slipping away. At first, he would defend me quietly, telling me not to take their words to heart. But gradually, his responses changed. "Maybe they're right," he would mutter when Tessa scolded me for walking too much. "You should listen to them. They know better." It felt like a betrayal I couldn't fight against. I was carrying his child, yet he was allowing his family to break me down piece by piece. One evening, when I was 5 months pregnant, the situation reached its peak. We were all in the living room, Tessa on the couch, Brianna scrolling through her phone, and Grant standing nearby. I had prepared a meal that didn't meet Tessa's standards. She criticized the spices, claiming it wasn't healthy for a pregnant woman, and Brianna joined in, laughing that maybe I was trying to poison myself. I snapped. My voice shook as I told them I was tired of their constant control, that this was my body and my baby, and they had no right to dictate my life. For a moment, silence fell over the room. I thought perhaps Grant would finally step in, remind them to respect me. But instead, he turned to me with eyes filled with anger I had never seen before. "Don't talk to my mother that way," he said sharply, his voice rising. His words cut through me more deeply than anything his family had ever said. I reminded him that I was his wife, carrying his child, and deserved his support. But he only grew colder, repeating his mother's criticisms as if they were gospel. The argument escalated, and before I knew it, I felt his hands shove against me. It wasn't a playful push, it was a deliberate act, fueled by frustration and control. I stumbled backward, clutching my stomach in fear. The shock of being pushed while pregnant nearly stole my breath. Tears filled my eyes as I realized the truth. The man I had trusted with my heart and my future was no longer the man I loved. He had chosen his family over me, even if it meant putting me and our unborn child in danger. I gathered what strength I had left and looked him in the eye. My voice trembled, but carried a promise I knew he would never forget. "One day, you will regret this. You will regret everything." With those words, I turned and walked out of the house, carrying both my fear and my determination with me. I had nowhere to go but back to the place I had once escaped, my parents' house. As I made my way through the streets of Los Angeles, clutching my belly protectively, I felt a wave of despair crash over me. I had thought marriage would free me from the prison of control, but now I was running back into the arms of the very people who had caged me before. Still, I had no choice. I was 5 months pregnant, alone, and desperately in need of shelter. By the time I reached my parents' house, exhaustion weighed me down more heavily than the pregnancy itself. My feet ached, my back throbbed, and my heart felt as though it had shattered into 1,000 pieces. I stood outside the familiar front door of my childhood home, the same door I had once stormed out of in defiance when I chose to marry Grant. Now, with tears stinging my eyes, I knocked, praying that despite everything, they would let me in. Gloria opened the door, her expression as sharp as ever. The moment her eyes fell on my swollen belly, her face tightened into something between anger and disgust. "So you've come back," she said coldly, folding her arms. "I told you this would happen. You thought you knew better, and look at you now, pregnant and abandoned." Her words pierced me like knives, but I swallowed the pain and begged, "Please, Mom. I have nowhere else to go. Just let me stay until the baby is born." For a long moment, she didn't answer. My father, Martin, appeared behind her, his eyes filled with hesitation but not compassion. He glanced at Gloria, waiting for her to decide. Finally, Gloria stepped aside, but her voice was like ice. "You can stay, Marina, but only under my rules. Don't think you're free here. If you want a roof over your head, you'll live exactly as I say." I nodded, even though my heart sank. I knew what that meant: more control, more criticism, more chains. Still, I was 5 months pregnant, and survival was my only choice. The days that followed were suffocating. Gloria treated me less like a daughter and more like a burden she had reluctantly agreed to carry. She criticized how I walked, how I ate, even how I breathed. Martin sat quietly at the table, never speaking up, never defending me. I often wondered if he ever had an opinion of his own, or if he had surrendered to Gloria so long ago that he didn't remember how to stand on his own. But beneath the suffocating atmosphere, a spark of determination burned inside me. I realized that if I wanted to protect my baby, I couldn't depend on anyone else, not my husband, not my parents. I needed to find a way to stand on my own. That thought kept me awake at night as I lay in my old bedroom, staring at the ceiling, my hands resting on my growing belly. One evening, scrolling through my phone, I stumbled upon a video about people earning money online. It struck me like a beam of light in my darkness. I had always been fascinated by technology, and the idea of creating something of my own resonated with me. I began researching obsessively, looking for something I could do from my room without needing anyone's help. That's when I discovered the potential of YouTube. Watching others share their knowledge, skills, and stories, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could do the same. Maybe this could be my escape. The next morning, I set up a small space in my room, using nothing more than my phone and a cheap ring light I ordered online. My first video was shaky, my voice nervous, but it was mine. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of control over my life. I uploaded it, not expecting much, but with a prayer that it might lead somewhere. Gloria noticed my efforts quickly, of course. She mocked me, calling it a waste of time. "You should be worrying about the baby, not playing with your phone," she said with a sneer. But I ignored her. For once, I had something that belonged only to me, something she couldn't take away. I didn't know then how far this journey would take me. I only knew that for my child, I had to try. Within weeks of uploading my first few videos, I began to notice small changes that filled me with cautious hope. At first, there were only a handful of views, 5, 10, maybe 20, but slowly, numbers began to climb. A comment here, a like there, and then subscribers started trickling in. By the time I reached my 6th month of pregnancy, my channel had grown beyond anything I had dared to imagine. People from different corners of the country, and even abroad, were watching my content. Some thanked me for explaining concepts simply, others encouraged me to keep going. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, valued, and respected. Every morning, I woke up with new motivation. Recording videos became a routine that gave me purpose. While Gloria's sharp remarks still filled the house, I found a private strength in knowing that my efforts were building something real. Then one morning, I opened my email to find a message from YouTube. My channel had qualified for monetization. I stared at the screen in disbelief, tears blurring my eyes. It meant that all the hours I had spent creating, editing, and uploading weren't just a dream anymore. They would soon bring income, a way to secure my future and my babies. When my first payment arrived, I nearly collapsed with relief. The amount wasn't small. It was enough to cover hospital delivery costs in Los Angeles, with some left to begin saving for Logan's early needs. I felt as though God had opened a door just when I needed it most. For the first time since being thrown out of Grant's house, I breathed easier, knowing I had a financial cushion to protect us. But peace never lasted long in my life. Gloria found out about the money quickly, as she always did. One evening, she barged into my room, holding her hands out like she was entitled to everything I had. "So, you're making money now," she said with a bitter smile. "Hand it over. You owe me for letting you stay here. Do you think food and electricity are free?" Her tone was demanding, as if my success was hers by right. I clutched my belly protectively and shook my head.
"No, Mom.
This money is for my delivery, for my baby's future. I can't give it to you." My voice trembled, but my conviction was firm. I knew if I gave her a single dollar, she would never stop asking. Her face darkened. "Ungrateful girl. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? You think you're better than us now." Martin, as usual, sat silently in the background, his silence a louder betrayal than any words. I stood there, bracing myself against her anger, reminding myself of why I had started this journey, to protect Logan, not to please her. The argument repeated itself again and again. Every time Gloria discovered a new payment had come in, she demanded it. Every time I refused. The tension in the house became unbearable, but I refused to break. Each dollar I saved was a shield against the chaos that surrounded me. By the 8th month of my pregnancy, my channel had exploded in popularity. One of my videos went viral, bringing in thousands of new subscribers and a surge of income that was more than I had ever held in my hands before. I saved every cent, tucking it away for the looming expenses. But with each paycheck, Gloria's greed grew sharper. "You don't deserve this money," she spat one night. "If you're living under my roof, it's mine." Her words hurt, but they no longer controlled me. I stared at her with quiet determination, my hand resting on my belly as Logan kicked inside me. "This is not yours," I said firmly. "This is for my son." I knew then that I was no longer the broken girl she had raised. I was a mother preparing to protect her child, no matter what it cost me. 9 long months of carrying my baby had brought me to the final stretch. My body ached in ways I never knew possible, and yet my spirit felt stronger than it ever had before. I had endured betrayal from my husband, judgment from my parents, and constant attempts to strip me of my independence. But every time I placed a hand on my belly and felt Logan's little kicks, I remembered why I kept fighting.
He was my reason to keep going.
One cool morning in Los Angeles, I went alone for what was supposed to be a routine checkup at the hospital. Like every appointment before, I didn't expect Gloria to accompany me. She had never once offered to come, never once asked how I was feeling. I usually took a cab, holding my belly as I slid carefully into the back seat, watching the busy city streets blur past. This time, the doctor frowned after reviewing my charts. "Marina, you're very close to delivery," he said gently. "I think it's best we admit you today. We don't want to take any risks." I nodded, nerves tingling through me. Being admitted alone was frightening, but I knew it was the right choice. The nurses settled me into a room, attaching monitors to my belly and 4 lines to my arm. I lay there quietly, trying to steady my breathing, when the last person I expected to see walked through the door, my mother. Gloria entered with her usual sharp expression, her heels clicking against the hospital floor. She didn't come with flowers or words of encouragement. Instead, she carried the same bitterness she had always shown me. "So, you're finally here," she said flatly. "I hope you remember who gave you shelter when you had nowhere else to go." I felt my chest tighten. Even now, when I was moments away from bringing a new life into the world, she wanted to remind me of her control. I turned my head away, hoping to avoid a fight, but she moved closer to my bed. "You've been hiding money from me," she accused. "Don't think I don't know. You've been making money on that channel of yours while living under my roof. Hand it over, Marina. I want it now." I shook my head firmly, my voice trembling but steady.
"No, Mom."
"That money is for my delivery. It's for Logan. I told you before, I'm not giving it to you." Her face twisted in fury, her eyes blazing. "Ungrateful," she screamed. "After everything I've done for you, you still defy me? You're nothing without me." Before I could react, she drew both her fists tight, her knuckles white, and in a sudden, shocking motion, she slammed them into my swollen belly with all her strength. The pain was instant and unbearable. A scream tore out of my throat as I felt the world tilt around me. My baby, my Logan. I clutched desperately at my stomach, terror coursing through me. The monitors around me began to beep frantically, the machines reacting to the sudden distress in my body. My vision blurred as the pain racked through me. Nurses rushed into the room, their eyes widening at the sight of Gloria standing over me, fists still clenched as I writhed on the bed. "What are you doing?" one nurse shouted, pushing her back. Another nurse pressed the emergency button, and within moments, more staff filled the room. I could barely breathe through the agony. "Help me. Please, help my baby." I cried out, clutching my belly as waves of pain consumed me. The charge nurse grabbed Gloria by the arm, holding her firmly as she called security. "You're under arrest," another voice snapped as 2 hospital security officers stormed in. One of them pinned her arms behind her back while she struggled, screaming curses at me. The police were called immediately, and I heard the word assault, as if from a distance, through the haze of pain. Meanwhile, the medical team surrounded me. "She's in labor now," a doctor shouted. The trauma had triggered early contractions. They wheeled my bed quickly toward the delivery room, their voices a blur of commands as I fought to keep my eyes open. Hours passed in a whirlwind of pain and urgency. I gripped the sides of the hospital bed, screaming as the contractions ripped through me, begging God not to take my baby away. And then, through all the agony and fear, I heard it, the sound of a newborn's cry. My son, my Logan, had entered the world. Tears poured down my face as they placed him on my chest, tiny and warm, his cries filling the sterile hospital air with life. I kissed his forehead, whispering, "You're safe now. Mommy's here." Later, as I rested, exhausted but overjoyed, a police officer came to take my statement. I told them everything, that Gloria had attacked me, that Martin had always stood by her, never protecting me, never showing me support. The officer nodded grimly, assuring me that charges would be filed and the state would pursue the case. As Gloria was taken away in handcuffs, still shouting my name, I knew something inside me had changed forever. The chains that had tied me to her for 28 years had finally shattered. My son's arrival marked not just his beginning, but my liberation. After 3 days in the hospital, I was finally cleared to go home. But home was no longer the house where Gloria reigned with her cruelty, nor the place where Grant had betrayed me. For the first time in my life, I faced the reality of having nowhere to return. Holding Logan tightly against my chest as the nurse wheeled me out to the curb, I promised myself that he would never grow up in the kind of toxic environment I had endured. I had endured my mother's wrath, my father's silence, and my husband's abandonment, but Logan would know love, stability, and safety. That night, instead of going back to my parents' house, I stayed at a modest motel near the hospital. I used the money I had carefully saved from my YouTube earnings to pay for a week while I searched for something permanent. As I fed Logan in the small, dimly lit room, I scrolled through my phone, typing in words like apartments in Glendale and affordable rentals near Burbank. I wanted a place close enough to the city for opportunities, but quiet enough to raise my son without constant noise or interference. Los Angeles had no shortage of listings, but most seemed either too expensive or unsafe. Then, on Zillow, I found a one-bedroom apartment in Glendale with clean white walls and large windows that let in plenty of light. The rent was steep for someone alone with a newborn, but with my channel's income, I could just manage it. The next morning, still sore from delivery, I called the property manager and asked to see the place. Walking into that apartment for the first time, I felt a wave of peace. It wasn't large, but it was bright and welcoming. The kitchen was small, but it had enough space for me to cook meals while Logan played nearby. The living room opened to a balcony where I could imagine sitting with him, pointing out airplanes in the sky. I signed the lease on the spot, paying the first month's rent and security deposit with trembling hands. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was building. Moving in was exhausting, but it was also liberating. I bought secondhand furniture online, carried boxes one by one up the stairs, and set up Logan's crib by the window. Each item, no matter how small, felt like a declaration of independence. As I arranged our modest belongings, I whispered to Logan, "This is our safe place, baby. No one can hurt us here." Meanwhile, my YouTube channel continued to grow. I filmed videos while Logan napped, editing quietly late at night with him sleeping beside me. Viewers praised my resilience without even knowing my full story. Each paycheck became proof that I didn't need to rely on anyone else. Slowly, the savings account I had opened for Logan began to grow, and I felt proud knowing I was securing his future. But the past wasn't gone. One afternoon, I received a call from the district attorney's office. Gloria was facing formal charges for assault, and I was asked to testify. Because of Logan, the court arranged for me to give my testimony via video link. Sitting in my small apartment with my baby in his crib, I looked directly into the camera and told the truth. I explained how Gloria had abused me my entire life, how Martin had stood silently by her side, and how, in the hospital, she had nearly destroyed both me and my son. Weeks later, I learned the outcome. Gloria was sentenced to prison, and Martin received penalties as well for his enabling behavior. Justice, for once, had been served. When I heard the news, I didn't feel triumph as much as relief. It was finally over. That night, as I rocked Logan to sleep in our little apartment, I looked around at the walls that now sheltered us and smiled through my tears. We had survived. We had started a new life, one where love, not control, would shape our future. Life in my small Glendale apartment settled into a steady rhythm. Every day revolved around Logan, feeding him, rocking him, and watching him grow. At night, when he finally drifted to sleep, I would sit by my desk editing videos, my tired eyes glowing in the blue light of my laptop. The exhaustion was real, but so was the joy. For the first time, I wasn't living under anyone's thumb. Everything I had, the apartment, the crib, the savings account, was built with my own effort. And that independence tasted sweeter than anything I had ever known. Yet somewhere else in Los Angeles, Grant was beginning to unravel. I didn't know it at the time, but he had grown restless in the same house where his mother and sister still dominated everything. Without me there, without the laughter we once shared, his life grew cold and mechanical. Tessa and Brianna continued their routines, controlling and criticizing, and for the first time, Grant began to notice what it felt like to be suffocated. The comfort of siding with them was gone, replaced by a quiet emptiness that gnawed at him. It was through whispers that the truth reached him. A mutual college friend, who had stumbled across one of my YouTube videos, mentioned it casually. "Did you know Marina had a baby? She's running a channel now, and she seems happy." That single sentence hit him like a blow. Curiosity turned into regret when he saw the video for himself. On screen, I was sitting in my modest apartment, Logan nestled against me as I thanked my viewers for their support. My smile was tired, but it was real. He saw the glow of motherhood in my face and the undeniable evidence of the son he had abandoned. The reality of his choices came crashing down. He remembered the night he pushed me away, the tears in my eyes, the way I warned him he would regret it. And now, watching me raise our child alone, he realized I had been right. Guilt consumed him. For days, he couldn't sleep. The house felt like a prison, filled with the voices of his mother and sister, but empty of love. Eventually, he decided he couldn't stay there any longer. Finding me wasn't difficult. The legal proceedings against Gloria and Martin had been public, and my name was attached to court documents. Through those records, he learned my new address in Glendale. One evening, as the sun set over the city, there was a knock on my apartment door. My heart raced when I opened it and saw him standing there, looking older, worn down, and broken. "Marina," he said softly, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I was blind. I let them control me, and I failed you when you needed me most. Please let me make it right." I stared at him, torn between anger and longing. Memories of his betrayal flashed through me, the shove, the abandonment, the silence, when I begged for his support. Yet behind all that, I saw the father of my child, a man who looked truly shattered. Logan stirred in my arms, his tiny fingers curling against my shirt, and in that moment, I knew my choice wasn't just about me anymore. "You can't erase what you did," I told him firmly. "If you want a place in our lives, it will be on my terms. You will leave your mother and sister behind. You will put Logan and me first. And you will never, ever make me feel powerless again." Grant's eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "I'll do anything. I just want my family back." For a long time, I hesitated. Then I saw Logan's face and thought of his future. Slowly, I stepped aside and let Grant into the apartment. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. Months later, after proving his sincerity, Grant moved in permanently. He cut ties with Tessa and Brianna, choosing us instead. By then, my YouTube channel had grown into a full-time career, and with the money I saved, I bought a small house in Los Angeles. For the first time, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. As I watched Grant cradle Logan in the living room of the home I had purchased, I realized that my greatest victory wasn't just surviving, it was building a life where love, not control, ruled. And this time it was on my terms. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more powerful and emotional stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next upload. Your support means the world to me and keeps these stories alive.